Looks like we have most of the committee members in attendance. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It is 8:30 in the morning, September 22. This is the meeting of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee. We are participating in this meeting by a virtual process. And Wayman, if you would introduce that process for us.
Sure will. Pursuant to Governor Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-154, the Legislative and Human Resources Committee of the Kent County Board of Commissioners, in order to protect the public health, will conduct this meeting today via electronic communications. Any member of the public wishing to listen to the proceedings or provide public comment may do so by using the internet connection or phone numbers and passcodes, which are listed on the agenda on the screen. Anyone disrupting the meeting by using offensive language or actions will be removed from the meeting. You can send public comment email to publiccomment@kentcountymi.gov, publiccomment@kentcountymi.gov.
Thank you. And I think removal is a very simple flip of the switch by Mary Beth. All right, let's go to public comment. Anyone from the public in attendance that wishes to address the committee?
Check. The public comment inbox is empty, no messages there, and no hands are raised in the chat.
All right, very good. We will move on then to item number 2, approval of the minutes from September 8, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
This is Talon. I'll move approval.
Support by Ponstein.
All right, moved by Commissioner Talon, supported by Commissioner Ponstein. Any discussion?
No hands.
All right, if you will go ahead and take the roll to approve.
Commissioner Hennessy.
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yes.
Commissioner Melton.
Yes.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Yes.
Commissioner Teal.
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs. Commissioner Skaggs. Commissioner Talon.
Yes.
Commissioner Bonk.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Very good. Let's move to item number 3, Public Affairs Associates update. Becky Beckler is here, I see. Ready to give us a report on what's going on in Lansing.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you, even if it has to be virtually. This week is set to be a pretty aggressive week in the legislature, and that is because they plan to complete action on the state budget. This would be the budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. It's a pretty unprecedented process that they're going through. If you'll recall, the governor had proposed her budget back in February, and before the legislature really had an opportunity to dig into the budget, which typically they vote their version out of the budget in March and April and then continue those conversations. None of that happened. So the legislative leaders as well as the budget office went about putting together a budget really without doing any of the prep work or priorities of each of the chambers. They came up with an agreement about a week and a half ago between the budget director, Chris Cole, Senator Jim Stamas, and Representative Shane Hernandez. Other than stating that they are protecting education, there'll be no cuts to education and there'll be no cuts to revenue sharing. They gave no other details. There's no details about how they're going to fill any holes that might be for this budget, because if you recall, we used most of the COVID money to fill in the gaps for the current year budget. We were left with a little under $100 million of COVID dollars. So they really have done a fantastic job keeping it confidential. Every member of the legislature has been, I guess, signed a confidential agreement that they would share no information. And so today, I think will be the first time where we'll get some detail. The Senate and the House caucuses plan to unveil the details of the budget. They don't plan to pass out budgets individually, either as they did in the last budget cycle. What they plan to do is pass 2 omnibus budgets. One will include all of the budgets with the exception of the education, and then the other one will be all of the education pieces. So the budget will be passed by 2 pieces of legislation, essentially. We also believe that they're going to pass along with that a COVID supplemental. As I indicated, there are some extra dollars, about $100 million of COVID money that we received from the federal government that was unused from the current year budget. So they plan to run that COVID supplemental, we believe, this week as well. And there has been very little information given as far as what that could look like as well. So today could be a busy day for your inboxes, as I will be sending to Wayman and his staff all the details I possibly can so that we can review. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of time to make any changes. I have been told by the Speaker of the House that he believes that there may be an opportunity for a second supplemental in November and December. That would not be COVID dollars, that would be state dollars. The revenues for the state of Michigan continue to improve way beyond the expectations. Even after the August revenue sharing conference, revenues continued to increase. I think they were up by $150 million from what that revenue estimating conference projected. So our economy is coming back much quicker than we anticipated. And so that's good news for us, and it's good news for our state budget. So as soon as those details come forward, I will be sure to send those out so that you can take a look at them. The governor also signed a piece of legislation that we anticipated. It's House Bill 5488. It gives the courts the ability to keep levying fees until October 2022, I'm sorry. I've reported on this about every 2 years now as I looked over the review. This is based on a Supreme Court decision, People versus Cunningham, that decided that you could not levy certain costs on defendants, but it caused a revenue shortfall for, I think it was almost $100 million for local governments. So what we did is the legislature had allowed the courts to continue to collect the fees through 2017. And then in 2017, we extended it to 2020. And now here we are in 2020 and extending it to 2022. The governor did say when she signed the bill that she understood that this is a stopgap measure, but called on the legislature to actually develop a financing system that they could implement that would take care of this versus continuing to kick this can down the road, if you will. But she did sign the bill, so we have another 2 years in which we can try to find a funding solution to this issue. I wanted to report on that. Last week, the legislature also passed a bill dealing with pre-processing of ballots. Since we're coming upon a pretty significant election, there was concern about the time that it would take local clerks to open and secure the absentee ballots. This is a small win for county clerks, but it is a win, and it allows them to open the ballots on election day as they receive them before the Tuesday voting closes. It's a bill by Senator Ruth Johnson. It's Senate Bill 757. It passed the Senate last week with an amendment that it only pertains to this November election. The bill comes up in House elections today, and we believe that the House will take it up Wednesday or Thursday, most likely Wednesday of this week. The reason why everything is kind of on an expedited timetable is that the legislature, the House is planning to leave on Thursday. When they get the budget done, they plan to adjourn on Thursday, and they will not come back until after the election. The Senate is planning to stay for one more week, but when they adjourn that following week, they won't return till after the election either. So we have all of October. They will be doing in-district meetings, if you will, but we will not have any legislative activity. That just sets up a perfect lame duck schedule. If you recall, so we didn't have session for 3 months, March, April, May, and June, 4 months, March, April, May. I guess they did return in June for little activity. So there's been 3 months of legislative activity missed. My belief is that they'll try to make that up in a lame duck session. You're going to have members that aren't eligible to return, so they're going to want to get their legislation completed. There's going to be budget issues that we'll need to deal with. I'm sure that there will be COVID-related issues that they'll want to deal with. And we've got a Speaker of the House that's pretty aggressive on legislation that he's going to want to accomplish before they leave as well. So when they return after the election, I think it's going to be a pretty robust schedule. So that's why you're seeing the legislature try to get as much done as they can this week for when they return. It's going to be pretty aggressive. There's also a court case that I think is going to be interesting for your clerks that allows for absentee ballots that are postmarked by November 2nd and received within 14 days of the election to be counted. And they'll just be counted in 2020. But this is a significant change in how we count our ballots. And it's as a result of a ruling, Michigan Alliance for Retired Americans versus Benson. The Attorney General is not going to appeal this ruling. That's no surprise, I don't think, to anyone. So at this point, it looks like that is going to be the process for this one election, given the COVID-related situation. So we've got a lot of changes for this election, and so we'll anticipate how those go forward. At this point, that is the report that I have. I'm sure that, unfortunately, I'll have a lot more to say by the end of the day, but you probably don't want to stay around and sit on this Zoom call till the end of the day. But I will be sure to get that out to the Kent County staff so that we can get all the details of the budget to you as quickly as possible.
Well, thank you, Becky. I suppose we could reconvene at 5 this afternoon, but probably won't get support for that.
And I'm not sure I'll have it all by 5, but I will do my best to get it to you quickly.
All right. All right, commissioners, questions for Becky. I see Commissioner Melton, you have a question or comment.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Becky. As usual, it's always one of the highlights of my being on this committee is listening to you. I don't know how you do what you do with a smile still on your face. The comment you made, and actually it registered the kick the can. Of course, I used to play that as a kid, and we used a literal can. But with these monies, and the governor says that she doesn't want to keep moving that back. Was anything else said as far as how that's going to look? Because it seems to me like this is becoming, and I understand this year is an unusual year, but that's becoming pretty common, not just in Michigan, but all around the country, as far as just moving expenses back.
Absolutely, and this has been an issue. As I reported, we have continued to move this legislation moving forward. I believe that under Governor Snyder, he did put together a task force to look at that. There were recommendations. I believe Representative Robert Hewlin actually sat on that task force. The problem, of which a problem always is how do we pay for it? And as I indicated, it's a very significant price tag of almost $100 million. And when COVID hit, there's just no ability to fill in that gap and find a funding solution. I think they will seriously continue to look for that. This probably just isn't the year to do that, given the tremendous challenges that the state faces. We appear to be weathering the storm as well as we possibly can, but this probably isn't the year where we can fix this issue because of the price tag that comes with it.
Okay, and I understand that. I just didn't know if there was anything that was offered suggesting when or how they might, but I suppose there are too many other things on everyone's minds right now.
Yes.
With the election. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Steck. Welcome, Becky. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. So I got 2 questions. I'll start off. You had mentioned that lame duck is going to be really robust. I know every public official from school board, township, cities always hold on to their seats when they hear lame duck. Are you hearing any surprises of anything we can expect or not expect in that, lame duck session?
That's an excellent question, because that's always the biggest issue is what surprise should we anticipate? I'll send you an article that was in one of the local Gongward MERS that talks about it, an issue that is brewing. I believe it is Southeast Michigan, however, dealing with property rights. And that could be an issue that I think takes a lot of time out of the legislature. It's dealing with individuals that have contributed a significant amount of time and resources to state government. So that could be an issue as well. There's an issue that was just introduced last week, and it may actually come up in the legislature this week, dealing a big fight between the auto companies and auto dealers. That could take up a lot of space. So those are types of issues that we didn't necessarily anticipate that could come up and take up a lot of time because they're big issues. But there's also a lot of issues I think we're not going to know until all of a sudden a bill starts to get introduced. That's why the month of October, because there's no session, we'll spend a lot of time talking to legislators about what they anticipate, what they're working on, try to get out of them any surprises ahead of time. The leaders are pretty good about anticipating what they want to work on. They're pretty transparent about here's what we want to do, but it's all the other things that come up that we just possibly can't anticipate. But those are two issues that I think could be surprises that take up some room. But other than that, it's a lot of the little bills that legislators have been working on that want to get done that we need to be careful of, because what are the unintended consequences or intended consequences that could have by passing some of these smaller pieces of legislation.
And then my second question, and I have to say this on behalf of my good friend Jim Story in Allegan County, 4-year terms for county commissioners?
Yes, we have been working on that for the last 3 weeks. We've been actually meeting via Zoom with every legislator on the committee. We're struggling in the Senate. Senator Ruth Johnson is giving us a little bit of heartburn on that. So we're going back to the House and asking if we can move the bill. It's Representative Boland's bill in Ways and Means to see if we can make some changes. And it would, the stopping point is, as you know, is do we make it on a gubernatorial or presidential year? And at this point, we don't care, just give us one. So we're still trying to negotiate that. And that would probably be one of the lame duck issues that you could see moving forward.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your, well, summer's over.
Summer's over today.
So enjoy the week. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions, comments for Becky? I don't see any others, so thank you so much, Becky, for the
Thank you.
report. It sounds like your next one will be very interesting.
Yes, I'll probably give it a written report, but I think you should have it in the next 48 hours.
All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the next item, which is a performance measurements review from the Probate Court. And we have Avery Rose here with us today. Good morning, Avery.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, go ahead.
All right. Well, good morning to all of you. My name is Avery Rose. I'm the probate register. I started here in November of last year. Before that, just a little background about me. I worked in Allegan County for a couple of years as a circuit court law clerk, and I was the probate register in Allegan for about 5 years before coming here. I knew Susan Flackney, who's one of my predecessors from our Probate Registers Association, and Judge Markowski as well a little bit. And I have a kind of a humorous story about when I first met him, but I can save that if there's time later.
We'll make time for that.
Okay, perfect. We can dive in here to the next slide, please. As you probably already know, the probate court handles a number of different types of cases, including deceased estates, guardianships for legally incapacitated individuals and developmentally disabled individuals, protective orders, conservatorships, mental health petitions, and drain appeals. We also handle other counties' mental health petitions for folks that are lodged in our hospitals here, and name changes. Notably, the minor guardianship cases were transferred to the circuit court in January of this year. And that's something that I think had been in the works for some time, even before I started here. A brief overview of our staff, just so you kind of have a snapshot. With the probate court, we have Judge Markowski as our chief probate judge. He has 2 court recorders. And then we have 12 folks who work in our clerk's office on the 2nd floor. And among them is Deb Sanchez, who's our deputy register. with the and then Judge Ackert as well handles mental health hearings on Thursdays. The guardianship program is managed by the probate court, and our guardian monitor in that is Courtney Post. She works from DHHS, and she works with us as our guardian monitor. So that's kind of just a snapshot of what our staff looks like. If we could go to the next slide, please. Today, I'm going to talk with you about the alignment with board priorities, our strategic goals, some of our key performance metrics, some significant accomplishments, and then a look ahead at some of the projects that we have going. And we can go forward 2 slides, please. Henry Ford once said that obstacles are those frightful things you encounter when you take your eyes off the goal. And this year, everyone has had our share of obstacles, I think, and our share of challenges. But we've tried to maintain our focus on why we're here and why our work is important at the probate court. When people come to us, they've usually had their worst day or the worst week of their lives. They've lost a parent, a child, a spouse, and they're trying to figure out what to do because they've lost a loved one, or someone is incapacitated, they've had a stroke, or they've gotten a traumatic brain injury of some kind, and they need legal authority to make decisions for that person. So they're coming to us at a very low state, and we try to recognize that, and we try to help folks the best we can. And that's why our mission is to secure the sound and efficient resolution of cases, and doing so within an accessible and person-centered venue where every person is treated with dignity and respect. Next slide, please. So we have 4 main strategic goals here. The first 3 are more geared toward the probate court. The last one concerns the guardianship program, and we can dive right in to the specifics. Next slide. The first slide here is timely handling and fairly adjudicating all matters before the court. And the objective is meeting statutory guidelines for disposition rates. I threw this chart up here for you just so you could kind of see the increase in the caseload the court has experienced over the last 10 years. In just the last 10 years, our caseload has increased by 40%. In the last 5 years, it's been 16%. Among the biggest increases in case types, I would say, are legally incapacitated guardianships, in which we've seen a 28% increase since 2016. And then the mental health cases have increased, especially out-of-county mental health cases have skyrocketed, really. In the last 10 years, those have been up 165%. And that's just kind of a brief snapshot of how the caseload has been handled. And hopefully it'll give you an idea. There's an increase in the amount of work, and those dispositions become harder to do in that time period as the workload increases. So that's kind of why I wanted to share that with you. And we can go to the next slide now. This slide shows you the percentage of mental commitment cases disposed within 14 days. It's one of the particular disposition guidelines that we have to adhere to. The court has met or exceeded this particular guideline in the last 4 years, and we anticipate doing so this year as well. Every year, the court handles over 1,500 out-of-county mental health cases. Last year, it was over 2,000 cases. And so to achieve this kind of disposition with the amount of cases that we have in mental health cases is truly quite an accomplishment. And we can go to the next slide, please. Every year, the court submits what's called the SCAO 22. It's a caseload report showing the total caseload the court has handled and the new filings, and then the disposition rates of those cases. The disposition rate speaks to the time frame in which a case has been handled. So a petition has been granted or denied or dismissed or withdrawn or something of that nature. And I'm proud to announce that last year, in every case type category, the court either met or exceeded the case or the time guidelines for each case type. And this is just the first page of that report showing that we've met all of those requirements. We can go to the next slide. Our second performance measure is maximizing the effectiveness of probate staff through innovative technology. And our objective is properly training and equipping staff members to provide excellent customer service. Although time for training in the last year has been a challenge for us, we've tried to encourage staff to attend webinars and other events to increase and support their knowledge. In fact, we have a webinar coming up this Friday that our clerk's office is going to be attending regarding verbal diffusion and violence de-escalation, which we think is an important topic in these times. Staff are provided direction routinely. During the last half year or so, that's been incredibly important to keep everybody on the same page, rowing the boat in the same direction, so to speak. And so we've had to be flexible, and we've had to keep staff on their toes and in the know about what they need to be doing to accomplish their jobs. Importantly, we've had a couple of retirements this year, and at this point, a majority of our staff in the clerk's office has less than 5 years of experience, which means that providing information and tools to our staff is vitally important at this time. We're trying to expand our use of technology for projects that I will speak to at the end of this presentation, but just simply bringing people up to speed on their job tasks and what they need to do has been, I think, one of our biggest challenges recently. So this chart here shows an estimated number of case filings processed per full-time employee. If you take into consideration, this is just an estimated for 2020, obviously, but if you take into account the number of folks who are gone during leaves of absence, position vacancies, and limited on-site working hours, that number would look more like 494 or something like that. So just to give you an idea of how hard they're working down there. Next slide, please. And in the same vein, this slide shows you the number of hearings which probate staff have prepared files for hearings. Our file clerk was one of those who retired back in June, and she was out we had a vacancy for 11 weeks. And during that time, other folks in our office flexed their time to support those duties and to make sure the files were prepared in time. Between the time when the court had to restrict its operations in March till essentially the present, the court has handled 1,332 hearings, which is quite astounding given the fact that we've done a majority of those by Zoom and video conferencing. So it's just a testament to the work that our staff has done to make sure that we're able to continue handling emergencies as they arise. As you probably know, the court handles mental health pickup orders. We handle emergency guardianships where folks are in the hospital and they need an individual to make legal decisions or placement decisions. Those are the kinds of things that required us to stay operational, even when our on-site staff was limited and even when we had to restrict the amount of work we could do. The numbers you see in 2020 here are current estimates. Again, if we were to take into consideration the work hours that were restricted through leaves of absences and vacancies, that number is going to look more like 215 files prepared for hearings. Next slide. Our third performance measure is systematically collecting reimbursable legal fees. And we're looking at a percentage of those reimbursable legal fees collected to determine how we're measuring up. In the last couple of years, we've achieved our goal of 30%. This year, we're at 24%, but we're anticipating that we will reach 30% or close to it. And we can go to the next slide. The last performance measure concerns the guardianship program, as I said, and that's facilitating the provision of new professional guardians and the recruitment effort that we've been taking on to ensure that we have the number of public guardians needed to perform the work necessary. We had a couple of new guardians added last year in 2019. We've had 6 so far added this year, but 2 left shortly after their training. The court or the guardianship program is pleased to have a very seasoned professional guardian. Her name is Cynthia Thornberry, who conducts the trainings with our guardians. It's a 3-month training process with classes, and then she assists the new guardians with their first 2 or 3 cases that they have. So she'll go to Social Security with them, banks, and perform errands with them, kind of hands-on to make sure that they understand what they need to be doing to do the job well. We've had some disruption in our recruitment efforts lately. I think it's been difficult, especially with Social Security offices closed, banks, Secretary of State. You know, you have it. I mean, the whole spectrum of agencies and places that people need to, you know, in person get their business done. It's taken a lot more time for people to do their jobs, and that's no fault of those agencies. It's just the name of the game at this point. So I think it's been difficult for new guardians, and it's put a strain on our guardians that have been in the program for many years. Currently, we have 39 guardians, and we're hoping to add 5 every year. I will tell you, we'll probably be doing another round of interviews next month, I would anticipate, and we're hoping we can achieve our goal of adding 5 new guardians this year. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share this slide. This is the number of individuals that the program pays for. To give you an idea, that this has increased by 48% since 2016. And you can see the increase there. In just 4 years, this need has increased, and it's never been greater. The state of Michigan and senior millage pay the guardians $83 per month, and the county pays $60 per month. In 2019, our guardian monitor and our former probate register requested additional funds from senior millage, and they were able to secure an increase from roughly $155,000 to $230,000, which helps pay for the older wards in our program. And we've also been trying to streamline processes even before COVID, and make the work easier for guardians. They have so many tasks and duties. If we can make their lives easier, it'll ultimately benefit the wards that they're serving. So we've tried to streamline things as much as we can. Our guardian monitor is Courtney Post, as I mentioned. She has done donation drives where folks have donated goods and items like toothpaste, Depends, all kinds of things, and she'll send out an email to our public guardians and ask, hey, does anybody need supplies? Here's what I have on hand. That's been helpful. And lastly, I would just like to mention that some of our guardians have received some professional recognition lately. One of them, Bill Leader, was recognized by a nursing home recently. St. Mary's has recognized 2 of our guardians for their work, and I've gotten emails about the work that they've done and received recognition for. We have a lot to be thankful for in Kent County, and this program is a huge asset. I can tell you, I worked in a county where we didn't have a public guardian program, and it was very difficult at times to find a guardian for somebody. And the fact that Kent County had the foresight to put this together and to put it together so well is a huge testament to all of you and your leadership. Next slide, please. Just one quick note about a significant accomplishment lately. The court received a polycom from the State Court Administrative Office. This was something we requested back in March due to budget cuts. There was a delay, but with the help of county facilities, information technology, and scale, the polycom was installed back on September 4th. It's kind of hard to see on in this picture, but it's that little black thing on the very top of the TV. There's a camera up there, and the polycom connects the courtroom to the court's Zoom meeting room. And with this Polycom, we've been able to run hearings Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 or whenever the court needs it. And it's been extremely beneficial to the court getting its business done. And I'd like to thank Wayman particularly for securing the resources necessary to bring this together. He was instrumental in making that happen as well. So thank you, Wayman. And we feel that this Polycom fits within our mission of providing an accessible and person-centered venue, because we can have people in the courtroom or by Zoom, and they can all see each other and interact with each other. So we're giving people the option to either come in person if that's their preference and that's easier, or to appear by Zoom. And we're just pleased that we have this opportunity to use that. We're streaming all of our hearings by YouTube, and so the public can also access them that way as well. Next slide, please. And just a brief look ahead at some of the projects that we are working on right now. One of them is expanding the use of our imaging system. We use OnBase for that, and that was recently upgraded, and we are excited to begin expanding the use of that through scanning more documents and using it to its full potential. We are planning to use Adobe Pro for digital certification of documents, which will allow us to email digitally certified documents as opposed to mailing them. It'll be a lot easier for people who are receiving their documents, and it'll be a lot easier for us. It'll save on postage. So that's a huge benefit. Acuity Scheduling is another program that we have secured for in-person appointments at the probate court. Once the window reopens, we'd like to have a system in place to keep our staff safe and to keep those who are visiting us safe. And that's going to be our solution at least at the beginning, and we'll see how that works out. And Turbo Court is just lastly another thing that we've looked at. Circuit Court is using it, and is looking at it too. It's a tremendous platform that allows for e-filing of documents, and it has a lot of really great features in addition to just the e-filing portion. There's a lot of document specific information and data that can be used from the filings that are filed with Turbo Court. So those are the projects that we're looking at for the future. I'd like to thank you all for your time this morning, and I apologize for going over my time. I did receive some questions before the presentation today, and I'd be happy to address those now if that's everyone's preference.
That, excuse me, Avery, that would be fine. I suspect the questions will come at you either way, so
Okay.
why don't you go ahead and respond to them?
Very good, sure. The first question I received, and these are from Commissioner Hennessy, was who is in charge of the guardianship program? That is me. I'm the new probate register, and Courtney Post is our guardian monitor as well. How many guardians do we have? We have 39, and there was a question about how a guardian's work is assessed. They're assessed in a couple of ways. We have a guardian monitor who monitors the billings that are received every month, but we also conduct audits with a firm called Monroe Swiris Trump, and they do audits of roughly 4 to 5 guardians' finances. We've never had an issue to my knowledge with those audits. They've all come back positive. The court is statutorily required to conduct guardianship reviews every year following an appointment and every 3 years after that for legally incapacitated guardianships. And the court has a guardian specialist on staff who conducts those reviews, and she prepares a report that the judge reviews. If there are problems or issues presented, we reach out to the guardians and let them know that there's an issue, and we work through it and try to resolve issues as they come up. And so these guardians are independent contractors, so they're not employees that are reviewed like an employee would be, but we do try to oversee the work that they perform on a regular basis through these audits and the guardianship reviews. There was a question about the increases in the amounts paid to guardians in recent years. how much per case per month is being paid, and do we expect the state to increase the payment in the future? Currently, and I might have said this in my presentation, the state of Michigan and senior millage pay $83 per month. The county pays $60 per month. We have a whole fee schedule. I think it's like 8 pages. And depending on the person's demographics, where they're living, whether they're a veteran, the money they have, it all plays into what you can charge for a case. So if there's an estate case, if someone has a good sum of money, the guardian would charge that individual a specified rate in our fee schedule. There's a monthly rate, and then there's an hourly rate based on the types of work performed by the guardian. For cases that the state of Michigan, senior millage, or the county pays, those are just flat monthly payments. So the $60 that we pay on behalf of a county case, that's what the person would get per month. And I don't anticipate any increases in the amount that the state pays in the near future, but who knows? I'm not sure. There was a question about what factors are adversely affecting our recruitment of guardians. I think the pandemic obviously has been an issue for the reasons I stated, but I think in general, it's just not easy work being a guardian. These are complex tasks. It takes years of experience to master all of the different agencies that you're dealing with, benefits, how you qualify for those benefits and keep a ward eligible to receive benefits, dealing with wards who maybe have substance abuse issues and keep, relapsing, family issues. You're dealing with family members who think, they feel they could do it better, or they have ideas that they want to present. And all of those reasons make it a stressful job, I think. I think those are just a few reasons why it's a difficult job. There was a question about why we're seeing a growing demand for guardianship services. I'd say that it's an aging population out there. The baby boomer generation is aging, and there have been some articles written about this gray wave that's coming, or has maybe reached us already. And there's a real nexus between public health and the health of individuals and the need for guardianship services. If somebody is just extremely unhealthy and they need somebody to help them, they're gonna need a guardian quicker. So I think there is going to be a wave, and we've seen, it's a 28% increase in legally incapacitated guardianships since 2016. So I anticipate that that's going to continue in the years to come. There was a question about encouraging or recommending and providing information about other means besides guardianships. I'm assuming this is about powers of attorney, patient advocate, designations, things of that nature. Court staff can't provide legal advice to people who come to our window, but we do try to inform folks of what the law is, what's out there, what the possibilities are, to the best that we can. I think in some cases, case management has become an alternative to guardianship for some folks. But the fact is, if somebody's legally incapacitated today, they can't execute a DPOA, and they can't execute a patient advocate because they don't have capacity. So at some point, if they haven't set these things up in advance, guardianship is really the path forward. So we do try our best to educate folks, though, to the best that we can. There was a question about the percentage of requests for professional guardians filled by the Kent County Guardianship Program, and specifically the 85%. Is that good? I think it's an acceptable number of folks. So when people make requests, about 85% of them are found guardians. The other 15, usually it's either withdrawn because we haven't been able to find a guardian in an acceptable time frame for that person. Perhaps someone passed away. The ward might have passed away before we had a chance to secure a guardian, or someone else may have chosen to step up, like a family member, to serve. And then the last question is something that I frequently hear is that the guardians personally get whatever funds are remaining after bills are paid. Can we address this matter, because I think it's misunderstood? I think it's misunderstood as well, if that's the understanding. Guardians are not allowed to just get whatever is remaining in a conservatorship case. Whenever somebody passes away in a conservatorship case, the court conducts a final account allowance hearing. And actually I conduct those. So I review the accountings, and the guardian will have to show what the fees are being charged at the end of the day. And usually there are funds remaining, and those funds will have to go into a deceased estate. So a family member is going to have to open an estate, and that's not going to go to the conservator. That will go to the heirs or the devotees of that person under their will. So the final accounts are allowed, they're reviewed for accuracy, and the program has specific rules about how a guardian can charge for fees at the end of a case. So I hope that's helpful and that answers the questions, but I'd be open to any additional ones if there are some.
All right, thank you, Avery. So I guess I will look to Commissioner Hennessy first to see if you have any follow-ups to those responses.
I appreciate the responses. I'm glad I submitted the questions first so you were prepared and could really answer them thoroughly. Because when the court gets involved in a guardianship type thing, I mean, families, I have had one person in particular who thought she was going to get a partner in the care of her loved one. And it's not that. When the court gets involved, they take control. I mean, there is, very little decision-making or control on even personal relationships and visits allowed, or the care with, the care conferences within nursing homes. There's just, I think people really need to understand more what it means when the court becomes involved through a guardianship. And I fully recognize that I'm on Senior Millage Review Committee. I fully recognize that they're very necessary, institutions, that we need to have this, but yet it's also one to be used very, very cautiously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I will say, statutorily, the court is required to limit guardianships to the extent that they're necessary. So if we can do a limited guardianship, or for developmentally disabled guardianships, Judge Murkowski, there's a greater percentage of them that are partial guardianships as opposed to plenary, which means that they have been restricted. And I think he does a great job of looking at each case on its own and trying to restrict it to the extent that's necessary, just to meet the needs of that person.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, other commissioners with questions? I don't see any other hands up. Avery, I do have just a couple of questions if you can address. I was a little bit taken aback by the number of non-residential petitions that we manage or handle over the course of the year. I think you said somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000
Yes.
of those. And I suspect that has to do with the fact that we have some very capable, accomplished institutions in this county, and that tends to attract folks here. Is there any way, and has there been any conversation about either addressing the compensation for that, because that's costs that we just incur here on behalf of non-residents?
I don't know that the compensation piece has been addressed, but the way that it works is if somebody's lodged here in one of our hospitals, the out-of-county court will request an assignment from SCALE, the State Court Administrative Office. And so SCALE will assign Judge Murkowski or Judge Ackert to handle that case for the other judge. And it's done, and I don't want you to get the picture that it's all one-sided. Wayne County, Oakland County, Ingham, other counties are doing the same thing for us. I mean, so we could have instances where, they're handling just as many as we, and I don't know the number of cases that are out of county MI cases that the other probate courts are handling for us, but it's kind of a two-way street. And it's something that once that assignment is, received from SCALE, the court has an obligation then to act it becomes that judge's case at that point of the assignment. So as soon as SCAO makes the assignment, it's Judge Murkowski or Judge Ackert's mental health case.
Yeah, I think my impression was that it is sort of a two-way street. And so we have some that come in, we have some that go out. But in my own head, and I'm not sure where I got that number, I was thinking a couple of hundred cases, but at a couple of thousand cases, it seems like it may not balance out. But and I suspect that there's only a few counties in the state that might potentially be impacted in a negative way by the balancing, and we're one of them, I guess.
Yes, it very well could be the case. I mean, certainly a county like Allegan, where I came from, is not going to be, picking up the slack, for their case, because they don't have a mental health hospital.
Right.
It's really the counties that have the mental health institutions.
So thank you for that. One other question, and Commissioner Hennessy raised this as well, because we've had conversations about this at the Senior Millage Allocation Committee, and that is this differential between the rate paid the guardians, between the county rate, the state rate, the senior millage rate. Is that problematic? I mean, does that tend to leave guardians looking for, so you've got a $83 per month case or a $60 per month case, and if it was me, I'd say, can you give me some more of those $83 cases? How do you work that out? Is that problematic, and is that something we need to take a look at?
I think the cases are all being assigned. I don't think, to our guardians' credit, I don't think it's deterring them, the differential in that payment, from taking a case that's a county case. But I think in the long term, it would be beneficial to take a look at that rate of pay. And I think even administratively, for administrative purposes, we're figuring out how much do we pay for this type of case. And we have a huge spreadsheet every month that we sort through to figure out, is it county, is it SRM, is it state? And because there's that difference in pay, it's a little bit more administrative work to try to sort those things out. But I do think in the long term, it would be beneficial to pursue that option.
Yeah, I would encourage us to take a look at that. I mean, even if it doesn't yield differential in care or selection of cases, I mean, there is an equity issue here that I think bears some looking at. Commissioner Hennessy, you have your hands up again.
I do. Commissioner Steck, you just said something that raised a question. And I don't remember it being addressed, and that is, how many cases can a guardian handle, or how many, what is the range that they might be handling and the amount of time that they have to spend on each one? And I'm sure it's all over the board.
It is, yes. The minimum recommended amount is 20 cases per guardian. And we have folks who are working their way up to 20 cases. We have folks who have vastly exceeded the 20 cases. I think I've even seen it as much as 50 cases. The thing to remember, though, is that some of these professional guardians it's a business. They're independent contractors, and they have folks who are working with them to get the job done. So a lot of the successful guardians that are in the program have learned to, get help and have individuals who are knowledgeable about doing specific tasks a guardian needs to do to assist them in getting all that workload accomplished. So I would say, between 15 and 50 cases. I mean, it just depends on the guardian. And some guardians are comfortable having less and some are comfortable having more. But again, because they're not employees, we don't dictate, hey, you have to have 35. That's the only amount you can have. It's just, it's a give and take.
I see we have Courtney Post from that program online as well. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Courtney?
Sure. I mean, I can address kind of both positions of those county cases that are paid at a lower amount and how they get picked up, but then also in regards to the amount of cases guardians have. This past year, I've worked really hard at making sure that most, if not all, of the indigent cases, so our folks that do not have income, who are supported by a Medicaid or a Medicare DHS funding, that they are all paid out at $83. So if you are in a nursing home, you're paid out at $83 from personal funds or from DHS. If you are at the Grand Rapids Home for Vets, you are now also paid out at $83 per month. If you are a self-pay and you have the capacity to pay out at 83, that is something that's also written in. So right now, the lowest payout amount is that $60 from the county. And that's if you are kind of in this loophole of folks that you are under the age of 60 and you were not referred by Adult Protective Services. So if we get a referral from the hospital, for example, and this individual, you know, isn't really connected with services, isn't you know, appropriate for a nursing home or something along those lines, and maybe they're going to stay in the community with community living supports in an adult foster care home, that's somebody that would get paid at $60 a month. And I have seen that guardians are less likely to pick up those cases because they are a lot more work than our other cases. So they're getting paid at a lower amount and they're more work. And they do still get picked up, but just not as quickly as the other cases do. Because no matter how much work you put into them, it's only $60 per month. So on top of all of your other cases, you're picking up somebody new where you need to go to Social Security. You need to make sure that this person is placed in a facility, and it's very hard to place people right now, whether it's an AFC or a different type of facility. Making sure you're connecting with Network 180 to get this person on case management, dealing with any mental health immediate crisis or a lot of times substance abuse crisis, and then dealing with hostile family members, or there might be, they might be associated with less than savory characters in the community that have been financially exploiting them or using substances with them. So although we do have a large amount of people that are referred and are paid out by the county at $60 per month, they really are some of our harder cases. So there's that. And then speaking to the case management piece, or to how many cases each guardian has, our guardians are phenomenal at figuring out what works for them. I do on-site reviews regularly with the guardians, and I talk to probably, I would say 80% of our guardians every single week. And what happens is once you get a case set up and settled and you have them in a stable environment, you know, their DHS, their Medicaid is turned on, they're getting their proper medications like they should be, they're coming down off of those mental health crisis and things like that, you're able to have that person stable. And from that point, it's a matter of seeing them once a quarter, calling their doctor, their case manager, or checking in with them every single month. So at the beginning of a case, it's a lot of work. But once you have them settled, you know, it becomes more of relational, and then dealing with issues as they come up. So our guardians that have a higher number of cases have either been in the program for a while, or they are phenomenal at time management, and they can show me exactly what they do and when they do it, and when they see their people. They report all of those numbers to me. I require them every single month of when they see their clients, when they've connected with their clients. And I will also say that any concerns or complaints or issues that come through, they all come to me. I address them with the guardians right away, and we get right back on top of it. And I would say that I've got a very good handle on what guardians, or how many cases each one of our guardians can have. And so if I see somebody picking up cases and I feel like they might not be at a spot where the rest of their caseload is really under control, I will say, let's hold off on this for right now, because I still see that you need to take care of A, B, and C with these wards over here, which I think is the benefit of this program, because we do have so much oversight.
Yep, absolutely. That's, someone has to be the traffic cop there, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You may have also mentioned a little bit in that answer as to why it's a little more difficult to attract people. These are not gravy jobs. These are challenging jobs. All right. Carol, you're not on mute. I don't know if you have more questions on a follow-up.
I have one, and it's, it's completely, one thing I'll say is you talked about hostile family members, and I understand family members can appear hostile. When they come to me, they're certainly caring and feeling very left out of the process, which is, one of the ramifications of having a court involved, and I understand that. But I am curious about generally, Mr. Rose, you mentioned some scheduled meetings based on acuity, and what people are relying on, especially now, is the phone system. And one of the complaints I often hear is like push 1, push 2, push 8, push, whatever. And I'm curious as to how your phone system is working, and if you're fairly efficient in how you handle them. And
In the probate office or the
well, just generally when someone calls and they say calls probate, I mean, are they able to reach people?
They should be.
Oh, they're actually
Absolutely.
reaching a person and not a phone, push 1, 2, 3.
Our staff has been on site since mid-June. I mean, our full staff, but we've had staff through the whole pandemic. If they weren't there, they'd be able to leave a message and get a response in 24 hours. But no, I mean, people, if they're calling, if you're hearing complaints, please let me know, because people should be able to get through and contact somebody at the probate office. And we have a rotation of folks who handle the phones on the second floor.
But I'm it's a generalized complaint that you hear, it's not specific to your department or anything else. And I haven't tried to call your department, but I am curious that people are able to readily at least reach a person and be directed in some way.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other commissioners with questions or comments? I don't see any others. So again, thank you, Avery, and then Courtney, for your comments. We appreciate your time. I know we went a little longer than we had perhaps scheduled or anticipated, but this is an important service for our county. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yep. All right, let's move to item number 5, which is a performance measurement review from the Office of the Medical Examiner. And Dr. Stephen Cole is with us once again to give us a report. Good morning. I think you're still on mute. There you go.
How's that?
Much better.
All right. I'm going to have to be as efficient as I can. Our office has 2 forensic pathologists. One of them, Dr. Start's been out of town for a week. I am swamped today, and my staff is waiting on me to get our 4 cases going. So with that being said, I will try to be expeditious. Next slide, please. All right. Let's see here. Now I have a fax sheet of paper. I guess maybe we should go on to the next slide. All right, this is better. All right, so what are our goals? Number 1, the medical examiner law states that certain kinds of deaths have to be reported to us for investigation, and this includes all accidents, suicides, homicides, deaths in prison or police custody of any kind, and people just found dead at home who die when they are not under a physician's care. And so we have 8 investigators that take these calls and do the initial investigation. They then report to whoever's on call. Obviously, it's me this week, and discuss the cases, and then I decide whether we need to do an autopsy on those cases. We end up doing about 30%, or the autopsies on about 30% of our cases. Goal 2, and this is ironic, to notify the health department of reportable diseases. Last Friday, I did an autopsy on a young girl with a history of vomiting and diarrhea. The diarrhea was accompanied by blood. She, despite having been seen in a hospital emergency department a day or 2 before she died, they at her home, and she did die Friday morning. And I was quite concerned, and now it's been confirmed that that death is an infectious type of bacterial infection of the colon. The other family members are being examined, and we have sent specimens from our laboratory to the state lab at DHHS for, for further determination of the bacterium. So perfect timing, and that is part of our goal. And this is a most recent case of many where we have been able to get the ball rolling and hopefully prevent other deaths. At any rate, goal 3. So we do provide statistics. Carmen, our office administrator, is the primary author of our annual report in which we discuss causes of death, manners of death, specific causes such as gunshot wounds, drug overdoses, and so on, and what the drugs are. We do that, and we have quite a constituency out there who's frequently asking us for numbers. Goal 4, to share information with families about their loved ones' deaths. So that is, again, something that we do. We do not call literally every family because oftentimes the deaths are apparent, gunshot wounds and so on. But whenever we think we need to communicate information to families, such as the case I just described of the little girl who died last week, or families have questions or further questions about their loved ones' deaths, then we tell them whatever we can and explain what we can. A final goal is cremation permits. If a family wishes to have their loved one cremated, it is our office's job to sign a permit for that. And what we do is we conduct an investigation into the death if we haven't already done so as part of our regular job. We look into the death and make sure that we're not cremating someone that has died in a way that their death needs to be investigated, including an autopsy. Most of the time, this is not an issue, probably 1 out of 100. We have to do a little further investigation. And it may be because a physician who is not authorized to sign the death certificate has put down something like a violent death, an accident, or something like that as the cause, which they're not permitted to do. Only the county medical examiner can certify such deaths. So, but we do that as a service as well. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so some accomplishments. We've actually had, along with accomplishments, challenges, which I think I will go into in the next slide or two. We were fortunate enough to get permission, I think a little over a year ago now, to increase our medical examiner staffing from 7 to 8. Our numbers of death investigations are quite high, and sometimes we would have times when an investigator could not be found. All of our investigators are part-time, and so they take calls as available. And there had been times when we simply couldn't find an investigator. At least we ultimately did, but it was a challenge to do so. So it's been very helpful with us being allowed to hire another person. Unfortunately, one of the people we just hired has quit already. She's a nurse and went to Florida to help with the COVID epidemic down there. And we have just now hired a replacement for her. So we are back to full staffing. We have worked with the health department and law enforcement and actually the media to identify and tabulate drug overdose deaths. For example, what drugs are causing overdoses and how many have we had, and so on. We have, as I think I will show in a chart soon, we have responded to scenes and completed reports in a timely fashion so that families and police and others who are at the scene of a death aren't there for an undue amount of time. We have the next slide, please. So actually, this is one of our challenges, the COVID epidemic. I will say that most of the COVID deaths that occur, at least in our jurisdiction, really don't even fall under our medical examiner jurisdiction, because these deaths are not sudden and unexpected. They're almost always in a hospital or on a ventilator, and they're not even reportable to us. We have had a few where I've actually done one autopsy on a COVID victim, and we've had a number of other cases of individuals who had symptoms of COVID. And sorry about the phone there. It's a very busy day here. We've had several who had symptoms of COVID who we were able to test post-mortem, determine they had COVID, and then we certified those deaths without an autopsy. One of my goals is to minimize exposure of our staff to COVID cases. A second one here, continuing drug overdose issues. These require a lot of investigation, a lot of toxicologic testing for us, trying to keep up with new designer drugs, new variations of drugs, particularly fentanyl, which is our most, I would say, overall our most common drug in overdose cases. Again, working with law enforcement, 2 weeks ago, I testified in court about an overdose case in which it was the federal government in that case, but it was a Kent County death. They were prosecuting the person who supplied drugs to the victim. A third, not listed here, challenge is that unfortunately, we work out of Spectrum, and they chose to eliminate one of our secretaries. And so we are very much struggling to keep up with things that a secretary would do, sending out reports, answering the phone, dealing with families, and many things like that. In fact, I'm very lucky. I was aware that I had to make this presentation today because we haven't had a secretary in place for a week. And luckily, Carmen reminded me that today was the day for the performance review as I was driving into work. So that is a challenge that hopefully will be resolved by the hospital as they see that we cannot function without full-time secretarial support. Next slide, please. Oh. Well, all right. Now I thought I had some more slides, graphs, and so on, but I guess I need guidance on how I should proceed. I can read off of these graphs, or maybe everyone has a copy, but I thought they would be, be on the slides.
They do have copies, Doc. I think there was something that happened with the PowerPoint, but if you want to pick out a few that you'd want to highlight, that I think that would be suitable.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And then we'll have, if anyone has questions. So looking, I guess we're all looking at the paper. I've got page number 4, number of autopsies performed. We did have a spike in 2017. We are projected so far, and you can see that they went down around 50 cases in 2018 and 19. We're projected to be around 410 so far this year, but we still have 3 months. So hopefully, we won't have a huge increase of cases that appear to be on the horizon. The next objective is, or performance measure, I guess, would be completing autopsies within 3 months. And we are doing pretty well. We're never going to be 100%. Actually, we're doing a little better than we did the last couple of years. We'd like to be at 100, but we're never going to make 100 because there's always those problem cases where we have to do extensive additional studying or history gathering. It may be looking for an unusual drug, and although our toxicology lab is excellent, there are occasions when if it's a new type of drug or a rare drug, we may have to send specimen to a referral lab. and that takes a while. Other things that can take a while are confirming identification, which may require DNA comparison. So there's always going to be a small percent of cases where they're problematic and we have to do additional testing. Again, we're kind of winging it here. I have a page here, page 5 on my copy here. Accepted medical examiner cases. Basically, that has been relatively flat, around 1,250 cases per year for the last several. Number of reported cases, I'm not sure if I have a graphic for that, is about 1,800. And the difference between reported and accepted cases is that oftentimes either physicians or nursing facilities or rehab facilities will have someone that dies there, and maybe even in hospice, a lot of it's hospice, maybe the person fell 2 or 3 days before they died, and they're not sure if the person sustained an injury. So our investigators look into those cases, and usually we can determine by the history whether it's likely that they had an injury that contributed to their death. Most of the time they don't. It was just an incidental incident that happened. But anyway, there's about 600 or so cases every year that it still takes our time and effort to look into, to get the information, and then to decide if that of those 600 or so that they are not cases that we need to accept. All right, so I again have a graphic here, number of case reports completed within 2 months of death. What that means is when our investigators accept a case, or when we, Dr. Start or I as the medical examiners, determine that a case is a true medical examiner case, our investigators are required to make a report. It's up to 9 pages, although sometimes on the drop downs they don't have to go into those. But it's a pretty lengthy process, and they have to make a report detailing the name and address and so on of the deceased person and the circumstances leading up to death, what the disposition of the body was, either released to a funeral home or brought into our facility, and what the final cause and manner of death is. So they have 2 months to complete those. Generally, we're around 100%, and I don't see a percent sign there, but usually they're done within a few days, actually. And at the worst, if it requires further investigation, it may take a couple of weeks, but I think we are pretty much right at our goal for that. Let me see here. Looks like on page 6 I have the same, well, looks very similar to me. This graphic, percentage of case reports completed within 2 months of death. And to be honest, we're at about 100%. It just doesn't look the same quite as the prior graphic. The next one is the cost per case of death investigated. Usually around $1,200–$1,300. Very briefly, there are 2 components. Well, the 2 main components are, if there's an autopsy, there is a fee that goes to Spectrum and a fee that goes to us pathologists for actually performing the autopsy. This cost of death per death investigated includes not only those cases with autopsies, but what we pay Carmen, our office administrator, and her assistant, Sharon, and our investigators. They all get paid, of course, a stipend, and they get paid per case as well. So it looks like we've done a fairly good job with inflation and so on of holding the line. I'm not sure why the arrow looks like it's going to be higher for this year, but anyway, we've pretty much generally been able to hold the line on the cost per case. Page 8. This is a continuing graphic that we do every year, a monitor, which is a percentage of scene investigations conducted within 1 hour of notification. What that means is that it's generally either the police or a medical facility that's going to call one of our investigators when there's a death. And if there is a scene, and I would say, I will estimate about a third of our deaths require actually going to the scene. It does, if someone dies in a hospital, we hardly ever go to the scene because there is no scene to go to. The scene was elsewhere, and then they were transported to the hospital. We don't go to scenes if it's, say, a nursing home death. At least we hardly ever do, unless it's a suspicious death. But for an average death, we don't go. So when we do have to go to a scene, obviously there's somebody there taking charge of the body until we get there. And so our goal is to get there within an hour, and it looks like about 95% of the time we're able to do so. Exceptions to that hour might be one of our investigators lives in the southwest part of the county, and there's a death in the rural northeast part of the county, Lincoln Lake or someplace like that, and it's in winter, so and driving there can take take a while. So I think overall our responses have been exemplary for being prompt. And let's see here. I think that's the last graphic I have. I am open to questions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cole. You described showing up this morning. I'm reminded of a circumstance with my secretary saying on the way in, you have a hearing in an hour. That's never fun.
It's a shock, but it worked out, thank goodness.
All right, good. So questions or comments for Dr. Cole? Okay. I don't see any. Okay, well, you ended up covering the waterfront very effectively, apparently.
Maybe I put everybody to sleep, but
no, you have us all eager to get you back to work.
yeah, I better do that. But thank you for having me, and I'm glad I got to share my thoughts with everyone.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's move to item number 6, miscellaneous. Do members have a miscellaneous comment? Again, I don't see any hands up. So I do want to just give the committee a heads up on the scheduling for the process of filling the various boards and committees and authorities. That is one of our essential responsibilities. Just a reminder that the schedule for applications is open through the end of September. So for a little time yet, and again, encourage any of you to continue to identify your constituents for purposes of applying for or submitting these applications. Once those are closed off at this end, we will proceed with the interview process, and I'll identify the teams that we again used last time. I'm going to ask Team 1, consisting of Commissioners Bonk, Hennessy, and Teal, and then Team 2, which would consist of myself, Commissioner Coleman and Skaggs, and then Team 3 would be Commissioners Ponstein, Talon, and Melton. And then I would ask Commissioner Bonk to chair that team and Commissioner Ponstein to chair his team. We'll get the assignments for these positions out once we have the rest of the applications in to know how we can allocate this to roughly equalize the work between the various teams. Noting that we would like to have the interview process completed and the recommendations from the teams to us by mid-November, and at least before we get to that week of Thanksgiving. We'll then take up the appointment recommendations at the LHR on our meeting of December 8th. with the expectation that we'll be able to submit the full slate to the full board at its very first meeting in January. So that's what's ahead. If any of you have concern or particular problem or difficulty in participating in any of these interview teams, please let me know, and I'll do the best I can to realign these. But consistent with what we had attempted to do the last time around, to make sure that all of us participate in a roughly equal way, I hope that this does that. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments from members, and I'll check chat one more time. Okay, no hands. Very good. With that, we will stand adjourned.